Hi guys, this is Athalavi from athaga.com and I'm doing a review of Tropico 5 for my YouTube channel today. So Tropico 5, what is it about? It's basically about a dictator who you control and he's set to rule an island nation for life. So it's a bit different. A lot of games try to pit you against dictators. This game makes you play as one. So, and you have lots of options here as well. You can educate your Tropicans and lots of other stuff. So, one of the first things I noticed in this game is your president and his family members and each of your managers have certain perks and can be upgraded. So this is a great thing. There's a sense of progression for your characters, and it's nice to play as El Presidente. It's I already mentioned this. It's a unique game because it allows you to play as a dictator rather than against one. And basically, these are the good things about Tropico 5. And there are lots of options to deal with problematic citizens and rebels. You can kill them in the streets, you can banish them, you can you can take away their properties, lots of options. And the game takes you through 4 eras. These are the colonial era, and then you go to the World War era, the Cold War era, and the modern era. Each of these eras brings a unique set of challenges, so that spices up the game a bit. For example, in the colonial era, your goal is to achieve independence for your country from colonialism. Right, so next, it replicates the hard-hearted nature of dictators towards their people, especially when their wealth contrasts with the poverty of their people. Right, so that's one point. And you have many options to identify and deal with rebels, particularly rebel leaders and crime lords. I've talked about this before. Now another thing in this is the residential buildings that you build. They do not generate money on their own. Instead, the focus is on exports. You produce goods and you try to sell them overseas, and that brings you most of the money you earn. It's a different concept because in a lot of games, residential and commercial buildings give you a lot of money rather than other buildings. And instead, in Tropico 5, you build cattle farms and stuff like that, and you sell them and you get money by selling them abroad. Next, you can choose your dynasty members and upgrade them. I talked about upgrading them, but you can even change how they look. Then you can choose a constitution according to the system you prefer. Like, there are lots of options here. Like, you can be a brutal dictator, you can be a good guy too. And there are constant elections as well. So in the elections, you can break those elections, or you can, if you're sure about yourself winning those elections, you can go through with them normally. And next, colonial era crown relations with your island are managed really well. And there are dozens of quests that get you on your feet and prepare you for what's going to happen next. It can seem like hand holding though, but it is a good way to prepare you, and help you build those buildings that you actually need to grow your town. I mentioned this before, and you can train and educate your Tropicans. And the last good point about this is you got lots of maps to play on. You can choose any map. It can be mountainous. It can be it can have a lake in the middle. It can be a sandy beach. Lots of options. Right. Let's move to the negative points about Tropico 5. What struck me most as they see was that it doesn't talk about the atrocities of colonial powers in the colonial era. Like, a lot of injustice took place in that time. And while it's fine to highlight dictators like Bashar al-Assad or Idi Amin, it's it's actually surprising that a lot of these games don't even talk about the colonial era. It's like a dark past they don't really want to talk about. And British colonialism ruined a lot of um, countries in the past, along with other colonialism, like the French were involved. Lots of other countries, Belgium did really horrible things in the Congo. So anyway, I expected it to be a little more about the atrocities of the colonialists. Finally, next story is combat. Combat seems to be an afterthought. You can't control it properly. There are some 15 units, some of the pirates and rebels which you cannot reduce, and you don't control your army in a conventional way. It's really different. It's really unique way to control your army. Like, they just go wherever rebels, pirates, or even Axis or allied powers land and fight them. Um, it's just there to say, like, hey, there's fighting in this too. You declare war and stuff, but you don't actually do that. It's really simple combat over which you have no control whatsoever. Next, there was no control over building management and no overview panel. So there were no options to tell you the best location for a certain building to be placed. And this I did not like at all. It could be confusing where your buildings were, how far their reaches. So that's another problem too. Like, buildings have no radius around them, and this radius should signify their reach, how far their influence reaches. And there was none like that. There was no radius that showed us how far that building reached and how far its effects were going to be. Next, there was no real way to know where building is in the mid and late game era, and it can be confusing sometimes managing your buildings and stuff. Right, next, I would have, I mean, I always have advice for games, particularly strategy games, and one of those is, like, we should have had scenarios in Tropico 5. These scenarios could make you play as particular dictators, like Idi Amin, possibly Bashar al-Assad, Saddam Hussein, and others. And it would have been a good idea because it would be something different, and you would get a bird's eye view into how these dictators operated, and you could probably have their whims and behavior and how they reacted to things. something like that. Though I do feel that there is a difference between soft rulers, and dictator is a very blanket term to refer to everyone. The country I live in, it's not a dictatorship by any measure. There are lots of rights you have here, and it wouldn't be so if it wasn't so. A lot of people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, even Philippines, so far away, would come here and live here and make money here. Anyway, we're digressing. So I didn't want them to allow us to play as violent dictators who've been horrible to their people. Next, some buildings and some resources are more valuable than others. For example, I think sugar. It was sugar. I haven't played for a long time. I haven't played Tropico 5 for a long time. But I remember sugar made a real difference. Like you could sell it and you'd earn a lot of money. But I think the problem was it didn't have a lot of fertile area where that plantation could be placed. Right, next, there are no landmarks there are no construction projects. For example, maybe you could build the Statue of Liberty, maybe you could build Hagia Sophia, maybe that famous cathedral in Spain, something like that. There was nothing like that. Next, the quests are pretty hand-holding. Like they are basicer. I don't know. That's not an English word, but they're more basic than basic. They teach you really simple stuff, and there are only advantages to completing them rather than any disadvantages. And the buildings are generic, like you have a grocery store, you have a tavern. There's nothing unique in the building menu. And finally, the last negative point is there was no way to expand your dictator's expand your dictator's Swiss bank account cash. Like this is a cool concept, by the way. Your dictator can add money to his coffers as he plays, as he rules his nation. But there's a catch to it because there aren't many ways to expend that cash. So it's a cool concept, but it's not been taken all the way. Right, so those are both the pros and cons of Tropico 5, and I hope you enjoy this video. It's a video review, so we're going to have some footage of, actually you can probably see it. There's footage of Tropico 5 as much as we've played basically, and I guess that's the end of our review. Thank you for watching. This is Atalawi from ataga.com. Like and subscribe. And visit our Twitter, Instagram and Facebook links, which we'll provide in the description below. Thank you for watching, and this was review of Tropico 5. Thank you for watching.